how I got to where I am today. My abilities to see, hear, feel, understand, know what it is that God, Jesus, universal consciousness, the angels, etc., and the councils have to share with me. So there, first of all, there is a difference in the energy signatures and the vibrations, the frequencies. When the message comes from universal consciousness or the source within me, so I do not, when I get the messages from source, it is not source as external, it's source from within me. And when I get my messages from the council and Jesus, and the angels, I feel the connection inside of myself. So it is a part of me, but at the same time, it's a little bit more distant than if the source is speaking from within me. So I've always been a dreamer in the sense of, even as a very young girl, I would have dreams that were beyond the typical dream. I mean, when I woke up from these dreams, I knew that there was something else going on, even as a very, very, very young girl, like under the age of 10. But I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand what the difference was. By the age of 15, I had begun to figure out what the dreams were telling me. And I had begun to be able to differentiate between which dreams were prophetic and possibly warnings, and which dreams were just me working out my everyday dilemmas, high school, et cetera, et cetera. As a young girl, I would have dreams of demons coming after me. They would be chasing me. I was always trying to run across this bridge, and I would be saying the Our Father's Prayer, even though I had not yet at that time accepted Jesus Christ. An important part of me finding Jesus has to do with my mother being Buddhist. So my mother is an extremely good person, and her faith and her belief in Buddhism and Nichiren Doshu, Gohonzu Sun, etc., her faith is extremely strong. So because of her influence in my life as a Buddhist, and the influence of the churches that I had gone to and the Lutheran Sunday school, I was looking for God. I wanted to know who God is, because there had to be an explanation. It couldn't just be that the Lutheran church was right and Christianity or my mom was right. I knew, I could just feel it inside of me that there was a middle ground. And so I wanted to know who God was. And so as a young girl, I'd sit on the swings in the park and I would contemplate, I would literally think about who is God and where is God? And I would think about, well, if God created us, then who created God? And who created the person that created the person that created God? And it would go down this huge rabbit hole. And until I finally stopped, because I'd start getting a headache from trying to figure out this spiraling rabbit hole. And then I would think about, well, if the universe ends, what's outside of the universe? And if the universe never ends, then that means that anything is possible, including houses that lived inside of people and dogs that had people for pets. Now, mind you, I was under the age of 12 when I would have these thoughts, but those are the thoughts that I had as a young girl. I considered the infinite possibilities of who we are and how we got here and who God is. And so in my journey to find God, I found Jesus. Before I found Jesus Christ, during my search to find God and to understand who God is, I had this idea, and I don't really remember where the idea came from. But I had this idea for a while that I wanted to be a nun. And the reason I wanted to be a nun was because I wanted to serve God. It felt perfect to me. It felt natural and it felt right. And more than anything, I wanted to serve God. And I can feel the emotionalism welling up again inside of me, as I did when I spoke about Jesus. So while I was having this idea of wanting to serve God, I did not know Jesus. I knew of Jesus. I knew about Jesus as far as the churches teach it, but I did not know Jesus, not personally. I just knew that I wanted to serve God. And then I found Jesus at the Central Baptist Church and accepted him as my Lord and Savior. And what that tells me now in hindsight is that in order for me to serve God, I had to know Jesus personally. So during that time when I was born again, when I lived fully as a born again Christian, I would babysit at a house that was just across the street from a local bar, tavern, that my dad would frequent. And when I would sit outside of the house, I would read my Bible. And one time, a couple of guys from the tavern, they would come over and they would ask me to read to them from the Bible. And as I did that, they would then ask me to explain what I had read. So there was an insight that's like a foreshadowing that this was what I was meant to do. During that time, what had also happened, it was late at night and we were upstairs. Our rooms were up on the top floor, which was also the attic. And we were staying up late and we were talking about God and Jesus. And my brother Dan was full of questions. And as we were talking about Jesus, the lights in the house suddenly went off in the attic. I kept talking about God and Jesus, and he kept listening and asking questions. Then the lights went back on, and I looked at him and I just nonchalantly said, I'm going to go down and get some water. Do you want to come with me? And of course he said yes. And we get downstairs to get some water. And he asked me about what just happened with the lights and did I notice it? And I said, yes, I did, but I didn't want to show any fear. I spent the next year or two getting to know Jesus better. And then what happened was life. Teenage life happened. And so Jesus was still there in my life, still figured prominently. I still went to services, but much, much less, only occasionally. And I became absorbed in being a regular teenager and going to parties and hanging out with friends and experimenting with drugs and alcohol and sneaking out of the house at night so that I could go hang out with my friends, running away from home, all those things.